One. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and today we got a guest that you guys should all be familiar with. Second time on the Lightforge now, the one, the only, the irreplaceable Ratsmah.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Ratsmah, thanks for coming on. How's it going, man?
It's pretty good. Thanks for having me again. I didn't think you would, so I think it's a big mistake, but I'm here again. Thanks.
Well, here at the Lightforge, we never learn our lesson, and I'm sure we'll be making the same mistake many times in the future, man.
Good.
Anyways, we want to get you on, talk a little bit about sort of the old gods meta. Let's just get started. Like, what do you think of the expansion, man?
I mean, every expansion is really exciting. You get new cards to play with after kind of like overplaying the old set. But this expansion in particular, I think it's very interesting. It's not as easy of a meta to crack. And it's a little bit, you see a little bit of like diversifying strategies in the arena. See a lot of people saying that faster decks work better now, and then a lot of people are saying that slower decks work better. And it's an interesting time for the game.
Yeah, I think that's what's the most interesting thing about the OG meta that I've seen. It's not the meta itself, which I thought, even before once we saw the cards, it was pretty predictable where it was headed. But in terms of how to crack the meta, people have a lot of varying, like, different theories, and also people are performing very differently. Like, I get comments, in chat and elsewhere all the time that's like, oh, my record has like dropped by 2 wins per run, and other people are like, the meta's so easy, I get like 8 wins all the time now, and I used to average 4. And that hasn't happened with any meta before this. Well, I don't know, maybe with the GBG meta as well. But
yeah, I mean, you definitely see that like in on the subreddits and everything. I've definitely seen that. Like, it's kind of a feast or famine mentality right now, where you're either doing really well, basically you're the not Merps, or you're not doing well, and you're the Merps of the world.
Okay, for the record, Shady has finally managed to carry Merps to 12 wins once in the OG meta.
Oh, damn.
It was a heroic task.
Something that Hafu was not able to do, and something that ADWCTA definitely was not able to do.
ADWCTA was able to do it. ADWCTA was able to do that. Our last coup went 12.
No, our last coup went 12, but the coup is also something different, right? When you actually tried to pull me out of it, we ended up with an 0-3 priest and a 1-3 druid.
That's true. I had the mouse. It makes all the difference.
Wait, didn't we co-op together, Merps? Like, before yesterday, wasn't that co-op like 12? Maybe it was 11. I think it was like a hunter or a druid.
I don't think we do well anytime we co-op rats. I think we're just cursed.
I think you keep saying that, so you don't expect to do well, and that just, affects our results as well.
No, I mean, in the OG, Merps has been super confident to no results that back up that confidence. I've seen Merps' stream. He's like, all right, let's do this. We're going to draft these picks. We're going to make these moves. And then his opponent pulls out like an 18-card combo with like 4 cards in hand. And you're like, whoa, I haven't seen that happen in a while.
I'm like,
and Merps goes like 4-3.
He just totally flipped the board and like tempoed out much more than I thought he could on this turn.
Yeah, and it's not like OG stuff too. It's like I'm watching you and you're not dying to like what you would think is OG stuff, like, oh, I have 3 bog creepers and you can't handle it. It's
right.
like the most random
it's easy
things.
to think of. It's like, oh, I'm facing mage. Let's not play into 20 Flamecaller, right? And then instead you just lose to like Mana Worm, Coin Mana Worm, followed by like spells. I'm just like, oh, well, I guess I die.
Yeah.
One thing I have noticed is, like, I think with every changing meta, like specific playstyles will obviously do better and also do worse. And I've realized that like playing more reactively now is a little bit stronger. I mean, you get a lot of opportunities to get a tempo lead back on the board because a lot of people are playing, in the early game they're flooding with a lot of 1-health guys, which makes AoE a lot more potent. In the late game they're playing oversized minions like the Bog Creeper that you guys fond of, and even North Sea Kraken just recently was added and everyone picks that card, and people are just accepting huge cards and being more comfortable playing them. So there's a lot of ways to play reactively and get ahead. Just wait for your like Hex or your AoE to hit.
Yeah, it's getting to the point now where you can almost expect half your matchups to miss the 2-drops, which is kind of weird. But that means as long as you get your 2-drops, you have a tempo lead on your opponent, despite just playing like a normal or even slow deck that happens to like draw into your 2-drop. So it's a high skill meta. It forces you to be able to look at every situation. Whereas I think before it was always like everyone's trying to get the tempo lead, except Mage maybe.
Yeah, I mean, after GVG, that
Yeah.
it was everyone just started rushing for early game board.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's like that anymore.
Yep. Now, even if you're a slow deck, you'll have the tempo lead at some points, and you'll need to figure out how to use it well. And if you're a fast deck, you really have to take care of, know what you're doing with the fast deck, because you have to take care of those bot creepers. You have to take care of, corrupted. What is that? Seer, Murloc, consecration, dude.
Yeah.
Isn't it just corrupted Seer?
No, it is.
Yeah,
I got it right on the first
I
time.
think it is. Yeah.
I just don't have confidence in my memorization skills of these cards.
Damn. Yeah, it works interestingly. Like now you expect, like if you see a mage, you're expecting them to have to like keep the removals in hand, right? Like they're gonna play this slow grinding style. But what like it ends up sort of like them dictating the matchup, because a lot of times I'm just like, all right, well now I don't want to coin out a 2 anymore, because they're like, even as player 1, they're probably going to keep that Frostbolt, keep that Flame Cannon. So I'm just going to lose this coin for nothing almost. I'm not even going to get face damage in. But because I'm expecting that, then I'm just like, well, then I slow down, right? So I mean, it goes to show sort of like what you should expect in this meta, but it also is like, damn, this is why like Rogue is so powerful, Mage is so powerful. They just have all these answers, and then they've all traditionally been very good, but now sort of within this meta as well, like Rogue can play aggro control very well, Mage can play this like the grinding style that they've always been good at, and so it's just like the rich getting richer, right?
So what classes besides Rogue and Mage can like basically do nothing and be good? Is it just Rogue and Mage? Are we missing some like secret classes that's actually
Warrior Withdrawal?
Warrior Withdrawal, okay. Going the constructor route. Alright. No, but it's true though. If you are Warrior, you have Brawl, or like if you are a Priest and you have a Light Bomb, it can totally flip your entire deck, right?
Yeah.
I think that brings up an interesting point with like deck building. There's a lot of very niche cards that are released with Old Gods, and especially now that you get the Old Gods card bonus. When you like pick these up, maybe you can draft like a deck around them. For example, something like a Doom in Warlock. Then you can, kind of like bait them into it, build a deck around that Doom that's a little bit slower, that sustains its life so it doesn't die, but uses a Doom effectively. I think it's I think for deck building it's a lot better, but at the same time, I'm actually curious why you say it's a high skill meta. I don't know if it's a high skill meta because it seems to be a lot more card dependent, like quality dependent. On your success.
I think it is very quality dependent in that there are definitely more non-viable decks, as in I more often get a deck where I look at it and I say, okay, 0% chance going 12 wins. Doesn't mean I can't get 6 or 7 wins with it, but it doesn't have enough value to carry it to the top levels. You always get those decks, but the percent chance of getting those decks now are definitely higher than it was before. But in terms of getting to 6 or 7 wins, I think it is more stable now, and it is more skill dependent, partly because I think the meta's still a little soft. It's very much getting back to normal, but there's still a little bit of the softness that comes from any new expansion coming out, and people adjusting to all the cards. But more than that, whenever you have a slow meta, you have a lot of like fundamentals that come into play, right? Like more turns, better for good players. There's not that much RNG introduced in this expansion, and taunts are reactive. They're a reactive kind of play style. So if your opponent plays a taunt, you can do something then. Or if you play a taunt, you have to make the anticipation. There's a lot more board trading. There's fancier board trading now that you have taunts, which all involve some like fundamental skills. And you find yourself in the situation of being a control deck that has the board a lot more often than you did before, because your opponent could be even slower. And on the flip side, you find yourself as an aggro deck without the board a little bit less, because if you're an aggro deck and you don't have a board, you're dead, right? There's just nothing you can do. You've lost the game, period. On turn 2, turn 3, doesn't matter. And you're just finding yourself in that like lose game now situation a lot less. Now, whether you can finish off the game or not, it's a whole different story. That also got harder, right? But that's, I think, more skill-based than whether you win the game on turn, or whether you're still in the game or not on turn 3, just because your opponent was able to, like, out-curve you, even though you're the more aggro deck.
Right. Well, to back up Ratsmah's point a little bit, I understand what he's saying. Like, Rats, I was watching your stream yesterday, and you were saying how, like, you can almost sort of check off a box and like sort of add to your win total based on like the cards that you're drafted, right? Like you were talking about Bomb Lobber. You're just like, oh, you know, like I have a Bomb Lobber. The chances of other people getting a Bomb Lobber are more rare. You know, like you could talk about Bomb Lobber. You could talk about even more high impact, like a Light Bomb.
Sunwalker.
Yeah, like or like Sunwalker. If we're talking about epics, like Call of the Wild for Hunter, Light Bomb for Priest, like those you could just like, oh, I'm gonna add 1.2 wins. I'm gonna add like 0.7 wins for a Bomb Lobber for things like those. And you know, it is very play dependent as well. But I think Ratsmah was just sort of like, man, it just really, it's just kind of unfair that like there's these cards that are getting rarer and rarer, and they impact the board in a significant way, and they add so much to your, you know, to your win total.
But wouldn't it be better that they're rare rather than that they're everywhere? Like I remember the muster for battleness.
Sure. I mean, it is good that they're rare, but at the same time, you know, you're always going to have high impact rare cards, right? So it's not the fact that they are rare; it's the fact that like sort of there's a bigger disparity. I think that's what Ratsmah was saying,
Okay.
and that,
And I think that's what like kind of creates that ceiling at like 7-8 wins, whatever it may be, at that mid level, like Adifta was talking about. It's where, you know, your skill can no longer push your deck any further, and it's like card quality that's keeping you down there.
Yeah.
And you know, you're just gonna end up with decks like that. I think it's more visible in specific games where, you know, you see the Sunwalker come down. It's like, oh, if you didn't have that one card,
Yeah.
you know, it would have been fine. Or if I had, you know, a card of similar quality, then I probably would have won.
I've been on the other side of that a lot recently, where I just look at my opponent, it's like at 10 wins, and I'm like, nope, I have a way better deck than you. We're gonna keep going down this path, and I'm gonna draw all my bog creepers eventually, and I'm gonna get all my card advantage, and you're just not gonna have a chance.
it was. I remember the other night where, I mean, this is like totally just sort of like I spent my entire hand. I built up a huge board, and I was like, all right, I'm all in. I had like a 10-3 Frothing Berserker, like a 5-4, and like a 2-3 out on the board, right? Going into turn 8, and I was like, all right, I'm like hitting his face. This is good. It's a Paladin. He has no board, and he drops Tyrion in turn 8. I'm just like, okay. Like, all right, I just got Tyrion. There's nothing I could do about that. And on turn 9, he plays a Kraken to kill off like one other minion. I'm like, all right, well, that's game. That's game. Tyrion followed by Kraken, and that's sort of what we're talking about, right? Like, yeah, you know, you can anticipate stuff, but there are these sort of like high impact cards, and just like that's a frustrating thing, right? Where you're just like, all right, like that's it. Like you just have a better deck, and my decision making doesn't matter so much. And these situations.
I can see that. I think that does come into play more, right? Because it comes into play more, not because you're actually drafting them more frequently, you're actually drafting them less frequently, but the game goes for longer. And if the game goes for longer, you have more chances of actually drawing into these bombs if you do have them in your deck, and the bombs are better because you get to that point more often. So whereas before, your real game changers were like Muster for Battle. They're all tempo cards, right? The huge game changers. Now you're kind of being screwed over by value, and that's much more guaranteed. Because for the tempo ones, like Muster's great whenever, but it's really good on turn 3, right?
Yeah.
Tyrion's good whenever, just whenever. Turn 10 Tyrion's not that much worse than turn 8 Tyrion. Turn 15 Tyrion's kind of the same. So
yeah, I think that's fine though. Like that's the arena bonus, right? That's why some of us play arena. Once in a while, you get this an insane deck, and it's really fun because you know it's carrying you really hard. And I think that's fine. I think you getting a Tyrion into like Dr. Boom, whatever you want, once in a while is good, but it seems to happen quite often.
well, because now like
usually
the
just
bomb
Tyrion.
is
It is cards like Bomb Lobber or Sunwalker that completely shut games out. And I think that's where the problem arises, where you know they are rares, not legendaries, and it should not be happening as often as it happens.
Yeah, and they are adding cards that do that. Like Cloud Creeper's a card like that. Kraken, like you said before, was a card like that, and still is. And it's getting more use, and it's getting better because of the meta, which makes its impact even bigger.
Yeah, ADWCTA, I think you make a good point because you were talking about how, like, in a slower meta, sort of the better player wants more turns, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's not that pronounced because the better deck also wants
Yep.
more turns.
Yep. The stronger value deck wants more
Yeah,
turns.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, the stronger value deck wants more
Mm-hmm.
turns as well in order to play the bog creepers, in order to play. So you could be the better player, but at the same time, if on the other side the deck is more significant, then
Yep.
you could have like small advantage every single turn erased with a Kraken,
So
right?
that's the mid range, right? You got to
Yeah,
figure
yeah.
that out, right? If your deck is just not that good, you need to end the game. Like if I'm looking at my deck and it has 6 big things, right? I was talking about this before with like the number of big things. It used to be 6 big things was the norm. Now 9 big things is the norm, which means before if you have 9 big things, you have a value deck. Now you need like 12 big things to really have a value deck. And if I have 6 big things, I'm undervalued. It doesn't matter how good my deck is. I'm going to try to end the game around turn 10. And if I don't, I just expect to lose. I may not, but it's a pretty good expectation that they're going to outvalue me because that's what the average value of the cards are now.
Yep. So Ratsmah, what like any tips for our listeners for this meta? Like, I think you've played a decent amount. Like, what do you think is important for our listeners to know about this meta?
Kind of know like how, like this is how you should always be thinking in Hearthstone. Is kind of know like how your opponents will try to achieve their win condition. Right now, it is a lot of weenie dudes in the early game, a lot of 1 health guys. This makes things like the new warrior card and the new mage card, the 3 drops, really good.
Yeah.
Try to get those tempo leads. Those are free wins if you can hit them on curve. And also, even in the late game, if your opponent plays with Bob Keeper, if you're like anticipating something like that on turn 7, 8, 9, and they are playing 7, 8, 9 drops, and even 10 drops now, you have a hard removal ready. That's a huge tempo advantage. Usually games are won off the back of like 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana advantages. But if you get like a 6 mana advantage at that point in the game, it's a free win.
Yep.
So, I mean, just anticipate it, save your hard removal for those situations if you can. Don't use it on a Yeti when you can just play a 4-drop or a 5-drop on your own on curve. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that would be the easiest tip to follow. Everything else, kind of just have to.
The saving your removal thing is so huge, and I see so many people doing it now, whereas I saw so few people doing it in the LoE meta or the TGT meta, and it's just like I can't bait people anymore. I'm like, hey, look, a Boulderfist Ogre, use it. They're like, nope, sacrificing 3 minions into it. And I'm like, damn it, now you're playing right. Now my big minion's gonna really get killed by your polymorph.
Boulderfist Ogre's small now.
It's medium size now, right? Like, think about how many cards are bigger than a Boulderfist Ogre now.
Yeah, you got too many, even before this expansion, Boulderfist Ogre was at the point where you're like, okay, look, there's still Krakens, there's still Force Tank Maxes, like there's stuff that's bigger than it, right? And now with like the offering bonus of these bigger cards, you're just like, man, Boulderfist Ogre, it's kind of mid-rangey.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do enough against like these new minions now, which is incredible. So with these removals, like we're talking about these, it just goes back to, it's like, well, what classes have the most removals and the most efficient removals? Mage and Rogue, right? So not a huge sort of surprise. And like Mage has the most hard removals and the most big removals, right? And Rogue has a lot of removals. A sort of a clunky removal and Assassinate, but Sap is ridiculous. Like, how many times do you play something and you're just like, please don't remove it for 2 mana? And that's, you're talking about 6 mana.
Anytime I play anything, I think, please don't remove it for 2 mana.
Yeah, Sap is ridiculously good now.
Yeah, Sap is ridiculous. And then they have the offering bonus to Shadow Strike, which is...
Oh, that card.
Yeah.
That card. Like, when they added it, it was clearly going to be game-changing. But, like, actually feeling its effects, it's a new game for the Rogue now. As in, they just... It's a better game.
By a new game, you mean? It's the same game, just better.
Yes, that's actually all that I meant by that.
Yeah. Oh man. But are we ready to move on to class balance? I want to talk about like what these classes and what Ratsmah thinks.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. I want to start with actually what Ratsmah thinks about the Paladin, because we're talking about hard removals and how important they are, right? What does the Paladin have? Still nothing. It's Oldemon, sort of semi-hard removal, and there's no offering bonus to it anymore. So what is going on with the Paladin? Are we still in the top 3? Are we now a little bit off? Are we like, where's the Paladin headed right now?
I still think the +1/+2 buff is pretty good. What I've noticed with Hearthstone is that buffs are just generally good. Arena is a game that's played on curve. Generally, minions will have that are picked or are seen as being powerful, have a higher health cap than damage cap. So it's not that even if you buff, they trade. You're getting value off it plus tempo. So you're buffing a Yeti to a 5/6, killing another Yeti, and having that Yeti still alive. So I think Paladin is still very relevant. It's still very good. Maybe it's a little bit weaker relative to the other classes now, but it's hard to say, right? With the meta being so fresh.
Yeah. And again, like we said this last podcast too, like the meta hasn't fully settled. I think this past week felt pretty stable to me. I think one more week of this and I'll be pretty ready to say, all right, the meta's kind of where it's going to be for the next 2 months. But it is still settling, and we still, everyone needs to get a little more experience to really figure this out, because as the meta's settling, right, even if it's settled right now, that means we've only played a week's worth of games in the quote-unquote settled meta, because we were playing before, and we were using the same cards before, but the meta was different. Yeah. And one thing that I have noticed a lot is how many mages there are in the meta now compared to paladins.
They're so strong.
Like, you guys have noticed that too, right?
Yes.
Like, just the frequency that you see them.
Yeah, mages are definitely the most frequent, and I would say, the most powerful in this meta. And here's the thing, like, why sort of paladins are not at the top. Like, Ratsmah, you were sort of saying, like, all right, success from paladin comes from these buffs, right? Well, what needs to happen for these buffs? Number one, you have to play a little bit faster, right? Like, you can't just slow it down, put down a minion.
Okay, but that's not that hard to play a little bit faster.
No, it's not that hard to play a little bit faster, but you need to play a little bit faster and draft these buffs and have them in your hand to use them, right? Like, I think as the paladin, in order to find success, you need to draft, you need a little bit more luck in your draft than a mage, and you need to have it in your hand. Like, if you never get that Blessing of Kings, like, you're so reliant on that Blessing of Kings or that, Divine Strength or the Seal of Champs in order to win the game. Like, if you're a paladin without buffs, how are you winning the game, right? Like, if you don't draft it and you don't get it,
his name is Keeper of Oldemon.
Yeah, but you don't have that bonus anymore, right? Like, you get one Keeper of Oldemon in your deck, you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. Like, I'm pretty happy to have it, because getting one is like, yeah, that's pretty nice. It's not like before where you get 3, it's like, oh, that's pretty standard. Just standard offering rate stuff. With the dilution and with the sort of like Keeper of Oldemon went from getting a bonus to getting kicked out and other cards getting a bonus, right? That's huge. So now you have one Keeper of Oldemon. That's fantastic. Before, you had 2, you're just like, oh, where was my 3rd one? Damn.
I think you bring up a good point. Like, with the dilution of cards like Keeper of Oldemon, like, you see less of this. It's more obvious what to expect, and paladins do have to play in a more board-dependent way, where you have to grab the board early, so you know what to expect from the paladin. So you can actually make a game plan around it instead of all game being like, okay, how do I come back? Paladin has every single type of answer, which is what it was like a month ago, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing for the game, is being able to anticipate something and slowly building to play around that lose condition. And I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, paladin should have never gotten that much flexibility before. I mean, it's something that we constantly complained about, or I complain about a lot on the Lightforge. But paladin shouldn't have been able to have that sort of power. Like, it shouldn't have been in their toolbox, right? Every class should have a certain weakness. Paladin should be, the ability to, it should be significantly weaker without a board. But Keeper of Oldemon allowed paladin to basically play off the board, which is ridiculous. Like, paladin should never be an off the board sort of character. And now we see that the paladin has like gone back to almost a more classical paladin, right? They have more tools, and they're not as inflexible.
Well, not a classical, just like a TGT kind of paladin, right? Like, it was still annoying. You still snowballed with like Murloc Knights and whatever. Your buffs are still there. You still have like your seals and all that, but you don't have Oldemon.
You don't
Or
have
you have very
Oldemon.
little Oldemon.
Right. Well, you don't have Oldemon, but it is still different from TGT because the card pool is so much bigger now, right? It is so much bigger now. So even in TGT, you didn't have the offering bonus of the GVG
That's true. Okay,
muster, but you could still get it a lot more often.
Yeah, that's true.
Honestly, I haven't seen Paladin in a while right now.
Yeah,
and
right?
It is partly due to a lot of people playing Mage, and Mage being so good against Paladin. And I think it's great. Yeah, Rapid Ghouls as well, and Twilight Sorcerers that are really good against Muster. It's so great. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck Paladin.
I mean, the Warrior and the Mage got like actual just anti-Paladin cards in the deal 1 damage to everything, commons, good cards. They were, I think Blizzard had an idea of keeping Paladin under control, and I think they did a good job with it. They kept Paladin under control while giving Paladin-y cards that are not even bad, right? Like, Divine Strength is still a great card. Stand Against Darkness is okay, right? No one's really complaining about it as being terribly underpowered. And Light in the Dark is actually a good card. It's just slow and value-based, which is not what's going to win a Paladin games, but it'll help.
But it's very different from the rest of the card pool.
Exactly.
I think it's, it just makes Paladin not so one-dimensional, where it's just you ride one board to the end. It's pretty good.
I totally agree. So newcomer to the top. Questionably, if they reached it, Shaman. Where are we?
My question.
Sorry, it was a really obvious question.
Damn it! You still stole it from me.
Okay, it wasn't an ingenious question from me or one from you that we were going to. Okay, Ratsmah. So the Shaman. where would you place the Shaman?
Ooh, I mean, number 1 for fun. Honestly, that's the reason why I continue playing Hearthstone is Shaman. It's so much fun. Oh my god. But in terms of strength, it's hard to say. Honestly, I hate these kind of questions because the meta is not settled.
Yeah.
People probably aren't playing classes very well.
I think they're really not playing Shaman well because I see Shamans a lot and I see them misplay more often than I see anyone else, except maybe Rogue.
Shamans are tough to play because totems are hard to evaluate, right? The RNG from the totems, and also it's like the amount that a totem is worth to you as a shaman depends on your deck, depends on the situation, and you have to be like, all right, like if I need a totem in a situation, I have to calculate the odds, and then it's like, what if I don't get that spell or heal? Then it's like, what's my backup plan, right? It just requires so much planning, like many turns in advance, even if you have powerful cards like Flame Tongue Totem or Thunderbolt Valiant, right?
Okay, all the new cards, of all the OG cards that Shaman got, what's your favorite?
Evolve, or the 4-mana Recombobulator.
Yeah.
Yep.
Master of Evolution.
Just for the evolve mechanic.
I mean, it's just so good, right? It's a Yeti plus.
Yeah.
Holy crap. And Shaman needed something like that in the previous update, or like before this current update. And I don't know. I think the only thing we can say for sure is that Shaman got stronger. To what extent is hard to kind of judge, but I think it's a good change. I definitely see more people trying out new classes, which is good, and not just sticking to whatever they think is the most powerful.
I'm at all 3 Shamans I've played in OG have gone 12 wins, so I'm a little biased here, but it's just been good. I've also gotten good cards, I'm not gonna lie, but it's been if you're playing Shaman well and you're using your totems well, and I don't even use the totems well. Every time I co-op with anyone, I realize people actually use totems for their abilities. That's not how I use totems. I see them as just interchangeable things on the board that I will use for my own purposes.
I'll grab a target dummy for 2 mana.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty good.
Exactly. That's every time I do that. That's all I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking about oh, maybe it can heal or what % chance it'll spell damage or taunt or 1/1. I'm just using totems for target dummies, and it's worked out really well because if you get the cards that buff, right? If you get those cards that buff multiple, whether it's a Flame Tongue Totem, whether it's a Thunderbolt Valiant, whether it's that new card is so good. I'm forgetting the name of it. It's the 5/5 taunt that gets better, lower costed each time you
Thing from the
use
deep.
the totem. Yeah, thing from below.
Thing from below. Okay.
Thing from below. It is so good because it comes out of nowhere, right? You're just doing your normal totem things. They're like, oh no, you have a flame tongue totem, and you do, but you also have a thing from below for 2 mana coming out in the mid game. And like that's the thing that, like, if you can't keep up with your opponents in terms of like how big your deck is, then you do something like that. And the Shaman is so well set up for it now, where you either get infinite card advantage from your totem trains, or you get like a huge swing in the middle of the game that totally out-tempos your opponent, and your opponents are dead. Like, that's how Shaman used to play back in Classic. That's how it's playing now. Hex is still amazing. Fire Elemental is still amazing. I love it. I love its position right now.
Yep. And it's, I mean, that card that you just mentioned, Thing from Below, it just works well with the Shaman class.
Yep.
I mean, Shaman, if you think about Shaman in a way where, you know, everyone wants to clear Shaman's totems because they are dangerous, right? It makes Shaman to be one of the tankiest classes in the game. Usually they're not absorbing just 2 damage per like 2 health. It's like they're absorbing 3, 4, 5 sometimes. And it allows them to set up for things like huge tempo plays with the overload mechanic and cards like Thing from Below to have a single turn where they just, you know, flip the board entirely. It just makes for a very powerful class. And I think it's unique in that way, where it can just, you know, have huge single turns. And I definitely think it's a very high skill class, where in the past we would, you know, a lot of people would say that it's a very card dependent class or card quality dependent class.
Guys, we're not, we've basically skipped over one of the most impactful Shaman cards too. The 4 mana 7/7 Flame Wreath Faceless.
Oh, that's a boring card. It's just a big thing. I think people make too much of a deal out of it.
It's really good.
It has significantly increased the power of Shaman though, right?
It did. Well, I think it's it's a good card
With
in
the
that
dilution
sense.
of
It
hard
has
removals? Yeah.
right. It has increased the power of the Shamans. It has also allowed the Shamans to keep up in this large meta, right? Like, Shamans have already had a lot of large cards. It just got added one more large card with a huge offering bonus. So it does set the Shaman up very well for this meta. In terms of just how, like, on its face it's so overpowered. In reality, it's not actually that overpowered. But, like, you know, like what Ratsmah said before, like, the Shaman just got a lot of cards that fit this meta really well, and that fit the Shaman's playstyle really well. And it's a class that really just kind of came together, right? It's like Warrior got 2 good cards in the last in LOE, but more than that, they got the taunt cards and the size that they needed to do what Warriors wanted to do with the weapons to make it more flexible. And this is what happened with the Shamans here. It's just like when Imp Gang Boss got added. That was a card that single-handedly established like a demon dominance and a board from which your power overwhelmings and whatever's can buff, and your demon fires and things like that. So it's just it pulled the class together, right? That's what I think happened with the Shaman in OG.
Yeah, and it still goes, you know, it still goes with the meta. It's not like something out of the blue where, you know, you get Flame Wreath and you just lose. You expect big guys, and this is what we talked about with the Bog Creepers and whatnot. You keep your hard removal and you draft hard removal a little bit higher in your drafts, and, you know, you get rewarded for it more often. So it's not just, you know, you get Flame Wreath and you lose. You know, you can anticipate that.
All right, let's go on to the question from the GOAT, and maybe we'll talk about some of the classes we don't talk about because they're so bad. But Merps, why don't you talk about the question from the GOAT? The question from the GOAT is brought to us by our Patreons. Thank you guys for your support. I actually don't have the list for this month. We'll go over the list next week.
Yeah.
But if you do want to support the Lightforge, it's patreon.com/grinninggoat.
After that, I don't know, man.
We're really good at this.
All right, guys. So I think this is a good question from the GOAT. It might as well fit in with the meta talk and the class balance. But all right, so we all know that with Whispers of the Old Gods, there's an offering bonus, right? For example, with Mage, you got the bonus to Faceless Summoner and Twilight Flamecaller. Now, let's just pretend that this offering bonus doesn't exist anymore. Like, it's all gone, and Ratsmah, you can now give up to 3 cards per class an offering bonus. Now, I don't expect you to sit here and go down systematically like all 9 classes and say these are the 3 cards for each class.
Today, a 3-hour special Lightforge.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, this kind of goes into class balance. Like, now you can sort of determine what cards are offered more for each class. Like, Now you get to play Ben Brode, get to play Blizzard a little bit, and I want to see how you sort of want to balance out all of these classes. So pick a class, any class, and let's get started.
You know, I think instead of like pinpointing a particular class and trying to like choose a single card, I think the main idea behind this entire thing should be that with every class, you should pick like a unique identity for the class. For mage, it should be powerful spells, you know, whether it be a hard removal or a huge AoE, and you should let those cards determine how your mage matchup should be. So, you know, if you're playing against mage, you can expect that to happen and you know what to do. Same thing with like paladin, you can expect the buffs, you can expect the snowbally type play. And, you know, like any cards that fit within that playstyle should be, you know, offered, any of those cards should be offered a little bit more to give each class their unique flavor. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So we haven't gotten to specifics yet, but like following up on this sort of high level stuff, this is what ADWCTA and I, you know, we talk about sort of like the unique characteristics of each class, like before each expansion comes out, right? We always sort of stress, it's like, all right, look, you got to make sure that whatever sort of unique characteristics are in each class, like that stays sort of like each class sort of stays within itself a little bit. You can't have it bleeding into other classes too much. Like with druids, you know, you have to make sure they never get a common hard removal. You could talk about naturalized, but you know that is a huge drawback, right? Like druids are not known for hard removals, so don't give them one. And like, you know, some classes just don't have certain tools in their toolbox, and so make sure they sort of stay within their lanes and make sure that like no class sort of can do everything, right?
Yeah, but it's also important to know that like there are some things that all classes should be able to do, right? Like small removal, draw cards, have some minions.
Sure, but that shouldn't be like the identifying feature of the class.
Yep, exactly. That's what I mean. So it, so Frostbolt or Flame Cannon in the Mage, not a huge problem, even though it's not fitting into the theme exactly. But your good thematic cards are like Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mana Worm, Polymorph, Flame Fire, 8 damage.
Flame Lance.
There we go.
Oh, I didn't know we were playing this.
Fire.
Okay.
Well, if I didn't tell you, what were you gonna do? What were you gonna call it? Fire spell?
Just leave an awkward pause for as long as it'll go on until someone else says something.
Excellent.
That's not a bad plan.
Yeah, it's also my strategy on dates.
Perfect. And this is why you are here instead of out right now, isn't it?
Little do you know, I'm actually on a date right now, and there's just the longest awkward silence.
Can't wait, man. This is.
Can you call 3 people a date? I don't know.
Well, I mean, we might not call it a date, but ADWCTA is obviously calling this a date. All right. Anyways, all right. Let me get started on a specific. All right, because Ratsmah didn't nail down a specific. I think like with Priest, they could use an offering bonus to Power Word Shield. I would give them an offering bonus to Power Word Shield. It is ridiculously powerful, but not. Even if you gave them that, it gives them an early game cheat mechanism, right? But every single class already has an early game cheat mechanism. I don't mind that Priest has it. It is one way to get, you know, to help them get on the board. As for the other two classes, other two cards, you can make them subpar to sort of, you know, compensate. But I think Priest, in order to get them back into the conversation, they need an offering bonus to Power Word Shield. That's the first thing I would do.
Okay, can I do the second thing for Priest?
Sure.
So for the second thing for Priest, you need Northshire Cleric. You absolutely need Northshire Cleric because Priest wins the late game, but more than that, it needs to win the card advantage in the late game, and it wants to do so on the board. That's where its hero power comes into play. But in order to do that, you actually do have to have a way to draw cards, and Northshire Cleric is a great way to have that playstyle be anchored into the Priest. Like, I've played Priest so much that like sometimes you just get to the end game and your opponent still out card advantages you, even though you're set up on the board because they just have bigger stuff. Especially now, right? When they have bigger stuff with like 6 damage, 8 damage, just stuff that like you rarely had seen before. Like, it really cuts down on a lot of the priest advantages that they had before, where you buff something to like 5 or 6 health and you can just keep it alive forever.
Yeah, I mean, you're bleeding out cards as well while you're trying to stabilize.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I guess third card, I would say Dark Cultist. Give Priest another way to get on board in the early game.
Yeah, it gives them a way to get on board and also rewards them for having a board, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that definitely helps. And I like how we sort of gravitated towards Priest because it definitely is one of the weakest classes at the moment, right? Like, if you look at how it operates and you look at how the cards at which it's gotten, and we're going to talk about like Power with Tentacles in a little bit, but you know, like it's gotten these slow cards, and sure, it's a slow meta, but slow means nothing if you just can't get on the board. And the priest, like, you know, everyone else is slowed down, but priest is still depressingly slow. It is just very awkward, very slow. Its hero power is
or you can say relaxingly slow.
Oh my god.
How relaxing is it when you're losing?
Well, you can just win, right? And then it wouldn't be so not relaxing anymore. Like, I came home last night, I had a few whiskeys in me, more than a few, and I was like, I want to play Hearthstone. It's midnight. You know, I'm not going to bed yet, but I don't want to like tax myself because I'm not going to be good at decision making right now. And so I played Priest. My other choices were Shaman and Rogue, and I was like, I'm not going to have any of that. That's way too complicated.
Why did you have to say that in such a creepy way, by the way?
Well, which part of that? In a creepy way.
Relaxing.
Oh, relaxing. It felt very Anduin. So I played Priest, and it really was a nice, slow-paced game where I just put dudes on the board, and I buffed them when I can, and I healed them when I can, and I got my 10 wins, and I went to bed, right? Like, there's a place in the world for that kind of play style. I don't think it has to always be so tense. Like, I'm totally helpless, you know. I'm at the mercy of anything my opponents do. You just have to have the right mentality when you play Priest.
Yeah, I mean, if you want it to be relaxing, so just give Priest more board clears, more things like Light Bomb. Just you know, keep resetting the board, and I think that is kind of fun, especially if you are choosing to play something like Priest. Then that kind of says something about your personality, where you want to, you know, take things slow, which is fine, and I think it's a fun way to play the game as well. And currently, we don't really have the meta. Like, Arena has always been like very tempo oriented, where you know, you can't miss out on any like free tempo from your mana. And it would be nice to have some games where, you know, you just take it slow and, you know, you guys just play through half your deck, more than half your deck, your entire deck maybe. I think it's fun.
All right, so following up on this question from the GOAT, well, we have two options now, right? We could either sort of talk about one of the underpowered classes like Hunter and sort of give them powerful cards, or we could talk about an overpowered class and give them, you know, mediocre cards to bring back into the pack. What are you guys feeling?
You mean like take Rogue and add Sinister Strike, a huge offering bonus?
It would still do well because then it would be like, oh, Sinister Strike to start a combo, and then Eviscerate, yada yada. You know.
So you're talking about like soft nerfing a class.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's fine. I still don't think the Mage or Rogue are so overpowered compared to, let's say, Paladin or Shaman or even like, you know, Warlock or Warrior or wherever right now that I would feel the need to really nerf them. I definitely wouldn't feel the need to give them good cards anymore. Like for Priest, right? One of the things you're thinking about if you're giving them an offering bonus to cards, you're like, let's give them to good cards because Priest needs it. You definitely don't have to think about that for Rogue or Mage, but I'd still go with cards that are about the flavor rather than just like bad cards, right? Like for Mage, I wouldn't be like, yes, Shatter. Let's give an offer bonus to Shatter because that's a stupid card in the arena. Yes, it'll help balance to make Shatter seen more frequently in drafts, but
yeah,
that's not how you want to balance the game.
It is sort of a lazy and just not a good way to balance Mage, right? It's like give them an increased offering rate for a card that will like never be drafted.
Right.
It's almost as if it's like, oh, let's give them one less slot sometimes in the draft.
But like something like Frost Nova or Cone of Cold, I can definitely get behind, right?
Force them to play in a certain way.
Right, because they're good cards too. They're not like awful cards. They just are needed in certain types of decks, and the more of them you see, the more you can build that kind of deck. So it is very flavorful of a card. It's not awful, and the more offering, but it kind of stacks upon itself, right? Like Blizzard can't release too many freeze cards just because of that reason. Because in Constructed, it goes crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about Hunter, so I'm just going to talk about Hunter. And I'm going to introduce an offering bonus. They need an offering bonus to Web Spinner, I think.
Oh, yeah.
You want to make beast synergies work. You also want early game. Web Spinner takes care of that. Like, it's cool that they have offering bonus to Fiery Bat and Carry On Grub. And, it does help to curve out a little bit. But if you want Hunters to work, give them consistent beast synergy and cheap early game. I think offering bonus to Web Spinner would go a long way to making the class better.
Yeah, I think it also hits that checklist of, it being 1, a fun card, 2, not overpowered, 3, necessary to, kind of boost the strength of the class. Yep. So, yeah, I think it's good.
Yep, I'd add Unleash the Hounds on top of that. It's so unique. They either need something that's similar to Unleash the Hounds, or they just have to make it seen more often. It was always such a key part of how Hunters worked, in the arena, at least, and it's basically their only comeback mechanism. So right now, the Hunter is if you have the board, you look for your right time to push, right, or you push and then you try to finish them off with reach. Or if you don't have the board, you switch over to just try to get as much reach as possible. It's very one-dimensional. It's probably, I mean, it is. It's as one-dimensional as Priest play, right? And that's, you got to find a way to like spice both of them up a little. You don't have to make it, change their identity or anything, but if something was already a part of its identity, you could emphasize it a little. Like Priest has the whole shadow thing, Hunters have Unleash the Hounds to like retake the board. And I think those parts should be emphasized a bit.
Yeah. And I think with those two, you could do something else, right? Like if you're going to give them Web Spinner and Unleash, like that already takes care of a few things. And then the third one could be
you mean 1/1 beast?
Yeah. It could be a powerful card, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, pure aggro, right? It could be something like
Explosive Trap.
All right, maybe not explosive.
Misdirect.
What
Misdirect
about
control hunter?
Multi-shot?
Sorry, that was my whole thought.
Nice follow-up. But I mean, what I'm thinking is like we don't have to, with these 3-card offering bonuses, push the class in one direction specifically, right? Like, how do you bring a class back? Make sure that it's able to play the way it wants to play, and at the same time, give it powerful options, right? Which I think Web Spinner is a great 1-drop, and it gives options, and it increases, like Rats said, it checks off a lot of boxes. At the same time, like giving an offering bonus is something like multi-shot, not overpowered, and it sort of allows them to play this sort of aggro control style, right?
Yeah, but that's not really what, like, you never think multi-shot when you think Hunter. It's just, it's a tool that they have, but it's not.
But
I think Cleave and Fork Lightning are even more integral to Warrior and Shaman than the multi-shot is to Hunter.
Yeah, but why do you have to give them something that's like,
that
was never a part of the offering bonus. You don't have to like be like, whoa, it has to fit with the soul of the class, right?
I think it should, because you see it more often, so it's more part of the class than the other cards. I would go with something like Explosive Shot or Snipe, like get a secret up in the offering bonus. I don't know.
What about something like Hellmaster? By itself, it's not too powerful, but it would also make drafting just like River Crocs, like common, like neutral beasts, a lot more fun as well.
Totally, that would be a great pick as well.
So we're basically making Hunters more like Paladins. Almost.
No, more like beasts. More like
no,
beasts.
I mean more like Paladins, basically.
Like a beastly version of a Paladin.
Beast Paladin. That's basically the alternate name for it. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. But if we're going down that route, like with Paladins, I mean, are we giving an increased offering bonus to like Seal of Champs or something? Like, are we going back to that?
No, you never give offering bonus to Seal of Champs. You give offering bonus to Blessing of Kings, I think is a good a good card to give offering bonus to. It's powerful. It does exactly what the Paladin is known for doing, and it's not. I mean, it's kind of broken, but it shouldn't be broken, right? Like looking at it, it doesn't seem broken.
Right.
Man, that's the thing about Paladin. Even like bad cards are annoying. Like even like just humility.
Humility is really annoying. Yeah.
Holy moly.
Humility is annoying. All their secrets are really annoying.
Yes. Yeah. So I would do that. I would. I mean, okay, people are gonna kill me for this, but I would give something like Aldor or Humility, like an offering bonus, just to not give it to Oldemon and yet still have their follow the rules-ness be represented somehow.
So Paladin is a class that like can right. It's one of those classes that does sort of like impact the board in that very unique way, right? And that's it.
Yep, exactly. And then maybe Guardian of Kings. That seems Paladin-y.
Okay, yeah, I mean that is very Paladin-y. As long as we're not doing like, all right, increased offering rate for Blessing of Kings, Keeper of Oldemon, and Argent Protector.
Oh, Argent Protector, actually. I can see that. That's pretty Paladin-y too.
I think that's, if you're giving bonus offering rate to like those other cards, I don't think you can give it to.
That's true. Protector. That's true. You gotta pick there.
Yeah. Like if you give it to Argent Protector, then you gotta make sure the other, because one helps you get back on the board and the other helps you stay on the board. So you can't have a card that complements both of those.
Yeah, I would be a bad designer. I would make Paladin OP again.
World hate you, man.
You are the worst.
Okay, I think let's go on to the fun class again, to Priest, the nice, easy, relaxing Priest. And one of the new cards that they added to the Priest for OG is Power Word Tentacles. It's a common, and we just asked Rats before the podcast, like what specific card does he want to talk about? And we crossed off the list all the cool ones we've already talked about. And he's picked Power Word Tentacles, which for card good bad, I think is perfect. Card good bad, if you don't know, is when we talk about a card and we tell you whether it's good or bad. So Rats, start us off. Power Word Tentacles, good or bad?
So for those of you who don't have the card names memorized, I don't either. It's the 5 mana priest spell that is a buff, +2 damage, +6 health. It's kind of like a balance, but obviously a little bit worse, just because you don't get as much for the mana that you're paying for the stats. I think it's a balance card. I think balance is maybe a little bit too potent, and we talked about this with the Paladin +1/+2 buff, where you know it's just buffs are insanely good in Arena. Because of how the games play out. I think it's very well balanced. I think dedicating half your turn in the super late game where you have like 10 mana or like more than half your turn is for that +2/+6 effect is very fair. I don't know whether it's good or bad. I just think that in certain decks, especially if you're powerful in the mid game and you can utilize that buff, and you have a lot of sticky minion shredders, even Yetis can be considered as being sticky. You can put in your deck and it'd be good. So I think any card that's like that, where you know it's just not innately by itself powerful, but you know exactly when to pick it or exactly when it's a good card, you know it's healthy for the game. It's a useful card. It's pickable. Sometimes it's bad. Yep. I like it.
Yeah. So the thing with Power Word Tentacles, and sort of compare it with Valence, if you look at the math of Valence, it just works out, right? Like if you think of it in terms of like, oh, 3 mana for a 2/4 buff, it's like it shouldn't be as spectacular as we all know Valence is, right?
It's because of the +1 spell damage.
Yeah, totally. Well, part of it is because +2 damage is always enough, right? It's always enough for you to dominate the next drop. Your Spider Tank versus their Yeti, that's enough, right? Like +2, if you're just going your vanilla to their +1 vanilla, it's always enough in order to take care of the next drop. And then obviously,
Kings
the
is
spell
overkill
damage
on attack almost always.
Yeah. And like the spell damage is nice as well. And with Valence, you have the difference between a 3 mana card and a 5 mana card is a world of difference, right? It determines whether or not you can actually coin it out on turn 2, and like it's much more impactful in the early game than the late game, where in the early game, you could just snowball and win. So we all know about this. The problem is when you get into the late game, it's not as vanilla anymore, right? Like you can't expect the sort of like, oh, 2-3 into his 3-4 into like, you know, like in the beginning turns,
But
it's
2
so
damage is always useful.
it's always useful, but Power Tentacles gets introduced into the game, you know, turn 5 plus at a time in which, you know, maybe you're playing Silverhand Knights, maybe you're doing this or that. Like the game gets a lot more complicated. So that's sort of like beyond the math. That's sort of why I think it's quite a bit below Valen's.
Yeah, I mean, people are not just playing Boulder Fist on 6. Usually they're, so not maybe not usually, but very often you'll see, 2-drop and a 4-drop, or a 3-drop and a 3-drop, or like a removal and a 2-drop. It's not as obvious as like, the vanilla cards, like you said.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Velen's is definitely a little bit stronger than it should be, even though Priest is really weak right now. I mean, if you think about it as +2 damage and +4 health, it's just a 3-mana 2/4. But it's not like that. It's you play it on Spider Tank. It's a times 2.5 damage, which is, if you think about it that way, that's insane for a 3-drop. It's much better than just a 3-mana 2/4.
Yep. And you preserve a minion, right? You preserve a minion, and it grows the minion, and it's a bigger minion, and so it's not just dropping a similar size minion on the board. That's why these buffs, especially the ones with more health and attack, all work out really well. But like with Power with Tentacles, especially, right? It's 1 mana off, right? 1.5 mana off in terms of its stats, and that's what it takes for these distributions in Priest to make it balance. That's a huge loss on the stats, right? That's why Merps keeps saying the math doesn't work out, and it doesn't, but it's still an okay card, just because it does exactly what the Priest kind of wants it to do. Now, it's a very high skill card, which I think Priests are generally lacking. So, my opinion on this card is basically flip 180 from when I first saw it. When I first saw it, I thought it was just like a waste of space. And Priest needed a better card, and it just wasn't doing enough. But now I'm looking at it, and I played with it. It is excellent flavor for the Priest, and because of its downsides, because of how like understated it is, and yet how good and fitting it is, it actually takes a lot of skill to play it. You have to know which one of your targets you want to make bigger at the cost of tempo, at the actual cost of tempo that you could just have in playing one of your bigger minions. And that actually gives you a decision to make as a Priest, which you normally don't have. Like, it's kind of weird to be sitting there with a Power Word Tentacles and a minion. You have choices. That's weird as the Priest. And it's good. It's very good as the Priest to have choices. And to make the choice, it couldn't be that's a Valen's, right? Like, it's just good tempo anyway. You had to make it anti-tempo to give yourself a choice. And another thing I noticed is that it's actually very good to combo. Like, it's a high combo factor card. I comboed it on Aberrant Berserker many times. Because Aberrant Berserker has 5 health, it doesn't get removed off of the board on the curve, and you can just put this right afterwards if it doesn't, and you just have the most ridiculously large, overpowered minion that'll get you 4 cards over the course of whatever. Especially if you can then heal it with whatever that new Priest card is called, Darkshire Medicine Giver Person.
I wasn't gonna help you in that.
Yeah, same. I was waiting for that awkward pause.
Darkshire Alchemist.
Alchemist, there we go. Man, people need to use simpler words. Darkshire Alchemist to then heal it up the next turn. Like, it gets crazy, right? Or you use it on a taunt. Maybe it's not even a terribly large taunt, but it's just taunt that they couldn't clear the turn before, right? It could be a Psychotron, it could be a Cog Creeper, but it could just also be like a Senjin or a Fen Creeper. And if they couldn't clear it the turn before and just kind of like let things hang out, well, now you put it on the taunt, you know they don't have a hard removal, and you just have an insane wall against them ever dealing damage to you or your other minions, and you can have good traits and all that. It's a very, very strategic card. And that was not there for the Priest before this. So I actually love this card now. I don't think it's all that much more powerful than I thought it was before, because it is still anti-tempo, but in order to use it well, it does take skill, and I really like this. Is like, I think Blizzard should really focus on what happened with this card. This is a very interesting way to add skill to the Priest, which is very much missing from the Priest generally.
Yeah,
it's fair.
Well played.
Fair. All right, are we done talking about Resident Sleeper Priest and go on to the more interesting class?
Let's
See,
do it.
you don't like the relaxing nature of the priest. You prefer the high stress environment of the rogue, where it's like turn one and you're thinking 5 turns ahead, and if you don't, you mess up everything and you lose.
I prefer not to think about this creepy version of priest that ADWCTA is pushing forward.
The relaxation
Virgin with
priest.
tentacles.
This is sort of like the trust me, like it's like just close your eyes and don't worry about this.
I will heal you.
Oh God. Oh God. All right, we're definitely moving on. All right. So, anyways, this week on the Coop, we are playing Rogue, a class that I think everyone is familiar with, and everyone sort of gets frustrated when facing.
Definitely that last part.
Yeah, definitely. So, Rats here still holds the record, I believe, with 6 Rogue 12-win runs in a row. So Rats, I think you're a great person to talk to for this topic. Where is the Rogue in this meta?
Honestly, I played so much Rogue in the past that I have not been playing so much of it since Old Gods. I've been playing a lot of, Shaman and a lot of Warlock, just like fun classes, but I mean, Rogue has always, even in Classic, back in Classic, like open beta, it was like the strongest class. They actually had to nerf the hero power and Defias Ringleader. I think, it just goes to show that the Rogue hero power is way flexible, and flexibility is key in Arena, especially when it comes from your hero power, and other classes have such weak hero powers that, Rogue is always going to be one of the stronger classes. In terms of like where it is with the other strong classes, I think that just depends on your skill level, man. It's a very high skill cap class, and you just gotta do it.
Just do it. The best advice possible from the
you got this
world record holder in Rogue.
You can do it. I believe in you guys.
Excellent. Anyways,
how good it is against taunts. If you're trying to rely on taunts and your taunt disappears, you lose. And the Rogue is really good at making things disappear, so it kind of fits. So if you get a good deck, it works well. But otherwise, that the Shadow Strike kind of has to make up for the fact that there are all these taunts, and you do have to get through more stuff, and your hero power isn't as flexible as it was before because Lightforge, right? Rogue does aggro control a lot more and a lot better than other classes, and that particular archetype has gotten better in this meta because of how good it is against taunts. If you're trying to rely on taunts and your taunt disappears, you lose. And the Rogue is really good at making things disappear, so it kind of fits. So if you get a good deck, it works well. But otherwise, that the Shadow Strike kind of has to make up for the fact that there are all these taunts, and you do have to get through more stuff, and your hero power isn't as flexible as it was before because of all the taunts, and so it balances out. It's kind of where it was before. I don't know if it's any more powerful than it was in OE. It may even be a little less powerful relative to the Mage, I think, because just the Mage has been getting, like, the meta's made for the Mage, right? Like, if you want to talk about a class that's flexible on the board, off the board, likes to go into the late game, just got a huge powerful late game card that's like effectively a 8/8 body for the most part, like, that's Mage. You're not going to top that even with your Shadow Strike. So I do think, like, I thought Mage was better in LoE by a hair. I think Mage is definitely better now. Not by like a whole tier or anything like that, but I think part of the reason that you see so many mages is that the meta has really swung to the mage's side, and just your normal deck with the mage is going to be better than the rogue. Like, it's just going to happen more frequently.
Yeah, I agree. I think with rogue though, like, it's not a favorable meta, but the cards it got are good for the meta, right? Like, Shadow Strike is so good because with
it's like the god card, right? That like everyone's been waiting for some class to get.
Yes.
It's the
and they gave it to the rogue.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the unconditional 5 damage, right? That has just been missing. Like, no one has had that. It's the unconditional 5 damage. They got the Bladed Cultist, which is not like it. It reinforces the rogue's early game, right? And even though 1-drops have sort of been, their value has diminished in this meta, but it's still like a very good card, and it still plays in the style that Rogue wants to play, which is always important. So, you know, it has these cards, and it still has the powerful Rogue cards that, you know, you always want. Rogue has always just been like, it has a lot of insanely good cards and a lot of like pure trash cards, right? Like,
Yes.
you're never drafting like Gang Up, you're never drafting Sinister Strike, but it's a class in which it doesn't have a lot of cards in the middle tier. It has like a lot of cards, and that's what you want as a class. Like, you want these sort of like amazing cards versus bad cards,
Yes.
because you just, you know, you don't want to be forced to pick.
And the Rogue doesn't even have like amazing cards, right? Like, I think Shadow Strike is it instantly the best Rogue card in the common category?
No. I don't think it is.
Okay, well, it's close. It's hitting that level. Like, it doesn't have a Flame Strike, it doesn't have, you know, Fiery War Axe, it doesn't have those things, but it has a lot of the very next level of cards.
Right.
And it has a hero power, which means it's the most consistent class.
Right, and it's sort of big three cards that have been around since like classic, like Backstab, Eviscerate, Deadly Poison, right? They're all within, you know, they're all within that next tier, as you would call it. And then you add on their Undercity Valiant, Goblin Auto Barber, and, you know, Shadow Strike is probably like a little bit above those cards, but, you know, you have this sort of big grouping of those cards, and I'm not even mentioning like Defias Ringleader, and your drafts just are very consistent because you have so many of these next tier cards to pick from, right?
Yeah.
So
I want to think about this for the Rogue.
Okay.
It had a lot of cards, like you were mentioning, right? And it dealt like 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage, up to 4 damage with Eviscerate, right? But no more than that. And then it has Sap, and it has Assassinate, which are hard removals.
Sure.
And there usually wasn't really a gap, because generally anything with 5 or 6 health, you're already sapping and assassinating, right? Back in the day. But now that we've raised the level, so that you're no longer like even like terribly happy to be sapping or assassinating an ogre, a Boulderfist ogre, all of a sudden we've added 5 damage to the Rogue. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like keeping up with where the meta is going with that one card of that Shadow Strike. I don't know if Blizzard designed it like that, but it like allowed the Rogue, because otherwise I think Rogue would actually have a problem. Because now if it didn't have Shadow Strike, this whole middle range of like 5-6 health minions just are going to befuddle the Rogue.
Right. It's like, you don't want to use your minions on the board. You don't want to sap or assassinate it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you deal with it? And now it's perfect with like, so you could either just Shadow Strike it, or you Shadow Strike and Dagger for 6 damage, and that's your mid-range removal right there. Yeah.
Yep.
I agree. I think it's. I think that's really the reason why Rogue hasn't fallen. Right. It's what Ratsmah talked about. The hero power is always good, and it's like leagues better than the other classes' hero powers before turn 4, turn 5 ish. And then plus the fact that although its playstyle isn't suited for the meta, the cards, and really Shadow Strike in particular, is just so perfect that it's. I do agree. I think it's number 2 by. You know, it's a little bit below Mage, but I thought Rogue was number 1 in the last meta by a little bit, right?
Yep.
Just by a little bit, and we had it flipped a little bit, and now I think we're both in agreement that Mage is number 1.
Feels nice that Mage is number 1 again.
Why?
Again.
Why?
Comfortable, you know. It's like I entered Hearthstone in this meta ish. Now we're back.
What's up with you and this like relaxation?
I don't know.
I feel
just
like this meta is probably the closest to classic that we've gotten.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Both the good things and the bad things.
Top, but it's only as very comfortable as ADWCTA would say. But,
Rats! Don't join ADWCTA.
There we go. Come to the dark side. I mean the light side. Yeah, so for the Rogue also, one more just kind of throwaway fact. The hero power is really good, but more importantly, it replaces a 2-drop pretty convincingly. And 2-drop dilution is a big thing for this meta. So, you know, Rogue hero power, even better, for at least the early game. So when you don't have the need to go anti-value to take all those 2-drops.
That's a really good point.
All right. Is that it for us this week?
I think it is. Rats, do you have anything else you want to say? Anything you want to talk about or promote or?
I mean, you guys can. I don't know.
I'll frame it in this way, Rats.
Sorry, yeah.
No. Okay, so Rats, we have been blessed to have gotten your expertise and knowledge. If we wanted to find more of this expertise and
go.
knowledge,
Okay.
where would we go, man?
Look at
you
Merps,
guys
way
can check
better
out my
host than
stream
me.
At twitch.tv/Ratsmah, or you can check out my weekly YouTube videos on the Temple Storm YouTube channel. And yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was awesome,
definitely
man.
check out the YouTube on Temple Storm. Rats does a lot of like guides for like arena drafting and playing and things like that, and they're really good.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right, it's been fun, Rats. I'm sure we'll get you on again some other time. But until then, good luck with your runs, and we'll see you on stream.
Hey, sounds good. See you guys later.
All right, see you, Rats.